Hello dear students, this is Dr. Aisha Nazuk here. Welcome back to my channel. Those of you who are my regular viewers, they are well aware of the fact that I run different playlists on this channel. I am a faculty member at National University of Science and Technology. My name is Aisha Nazuk. I have a PhD in statistics. So you can expect to find a lot of statistical lecture here. I also have a playlist on GRE exam. Plus, I have a different alternative playlist as well. This channel is a holistic interactive hub for my dear viewers. You can find playlist on positive thinking. You can find playlist here on humor as well. So this is sort of an overall learning and I would say interactive experience. So if you still haven't subscribed to my channel, please subscribe and share my videos through your social media. Support the channel. So today we are going to start chapter number 9 of Gujarati and Porter book. This is the book that I have been using throughout this playlist of Introduction to Econometrics. Gujarati and Porter are the author names. You can easily download this book from the Genesis library. I frequently put the link to the Genesis library, the video in which I have explained the use of Genesis library. I frequently put that in the comment section of my videos. So you can watch my video on how to download books from the Genesis library, and you can download any book from that library. So let me show you the first page of the book that I'm talking about. This is the book that we have been following throughout this playlist, Basic Econometrics book, and these are the author names. We are focused on, or the lectures are focused on the 5th edition. So coming back to the lecture, we are now starting chapter 9, number 9 of this book, and this chapter is about a new type of variables, dummy variables, and we will learn what are the dummy variables and how we can use these for different type of models. So contents of this lecture are a basic introduction of dummy variables. Then we will talk about ANOVA or analysis of variation model, and then we will have another model, ANCOVA or analysis of covariates. We will talk about the concept of interaction effect through dummy variables. Then we will talk about dummy variable used to test the structural break in a series, analysis of seasonality using the dummy variables, and then the piecewise linear functions. So for now, if these topics you are not aware of the basic concepts that are related to these topics, like what is interaction effect, what are dummy variables, or what is meant by a structural break, then I hope that after watching this video, not only you will understand the concept of these contents that are mentioned here, and you will also learn how to use these concepts in different economics or different econometric applications. Okay, so coming to the introduction of dummy variables. As the name suggests, dummy variables are some variables that are representing something. For example, if you talk about, let's say, if I ask this question to you, what is your gender? Of course, your response will be something that will be sort of descriptive. Like you will say that, for example, a person might say female, another person might say male, another one might say that prefer not to disclose, like because some people don't want to disclose their gender, so on. So dummy variable, in easy word, you can see that these variables have some description attached with them. Another example is, for example, if I ask you what is your nationality, then answers may be like Indian, Pakistani, Canadian, and so on. So these are all descriptive answers, right? In other words, dummy variables are representing some attribute or some quality. as I have given you example of gender, nationality, there are other example. For example, if I talk about Pakistan, we have 4 provinces here. So let's say if I ask you what is the province in which you took, where you were born. So some people might say Punjab, another one might answer KPK, which is another province of Pakistan, and so on. So we have descriptive answers to the concept of dummy variables. So by now we know that dummy variables are actually defined to measure a quality, like I said, gender or nationality or any other quality. So if you could recall the concept of scales of measurement, where we discussed the idea of nominal scale, ordinal scale, and then we had pure quantitative number, for which we use the term interval scale or ratio scale. So if you want to understand or develop a basic understanding of what are scales of measurement, then it's highly advised that before proceeding further, maybe you can pause this video and just quickly acquaint yourself with the concept of scales of measurement as to what is nominal scale, what is ordinal scale, what is ratio and interval scale. So anyhow, after getting yourself acquainted with these scales, you will get to know that most of the dummy variables that we have discussed for now. For example, I have discussed the dummy variable representing gender, another dummy variable representing to which province do you belong. So these are all nominal variables or nominal scale variables. So why are these nominal variables? Because they are used just as an identifier. For example, if my gender is male, then by no means I can declare that I am better than a female. So this is just a nominal variable or just an identifier. In other words, it's just for naming. There is no sense of ranking in it. So the examples that I have been discussing here currently about dummy variables, they are nominal. But having said that, it's not necessary that dummy variable is only used for nominal variables. As you proceed through the chapter that we are discussing, you will explore different examples and the chapter exercises, and you will get to know that the dummy variables are used also for other scales of measurement, like the ordinal variable, and even sometimes for ratio and interval scale, where we introduce category. For example, if I have data on age of respondents and I assign a dummy variable, I use a dummy variable to all the respondents who are aged less than 25. Let's say I give them a number 0, and people who are aged more than 25 years, greater than or equal to 25 years, I call them that the dummy variable value is equal to 1. So originally the data of age is pure numeric data, but I can recode it or transform it into the form of a dummy variable as well. So by no means you should you should never develop this concept here that dummy variable is only used for nominal variables. It could be used for any type of the variables, right? So dummy variables are generally, as we said, that these are indicators or identifier type of variables. So we assign them binary codes in the form of 0 and 1. As if, for example, if I use the variable, dummy variable for gender, and then I can use 0 for females and 1 for males. Now this assignment of 0 and 1 is up to the researcher. You can assign 0 to the male and 1 to the female, but the understanding is that these two categories are mutually exclusive. What does that mean? That a person would be declared either as a male or as a female, but not both. So let's say if I'm currently focusing only on these two gender categories, male and female, then 0 and 1, these are mutually exclusive categories, that a person is either a male or a female. Similarly, if I talk about, let's say I use dummy variable 0 1 for nationality, and let's say if a person has a nationality of Pakistan, he or she is given a code 1 and 0 otherwise. So now I have defined 0 in a way that all other nationalities are pooled in the category 0. So a person at a time will be either Pakistani or non-Pakistani. So these are mutually exclusive categories. So next, by now you have developed a basic concept of dummy variables. Next we will discuss how dummy variables are used in regression models, and regression models where all the independent variables are dummy. Right? I repeat my words, that if in a regression model all the independent variables are dummy variables, then we call such model as ANOVA, or analysis of variation or analysis of variance model. So with this, let's discuss first example of ANOVA models. I will shortly show you an Excel file where I have stored this data. This is actually table 9.1 from Gujarati and Porter book. This table has data on average salary in dollars of public school teachers in 50 states and the District of Columbia for the year 2005 to 6. And let's say that the researcher is interested to analyze whether there are any salary difference across different geographical regions. The researcher has told us that the geographical regions are defined as the first category is north, east and north central, the second category is south, and the third category is west. So the purpose of this exercise is to see whether the average salaries are different across these three regions or not. So if I show you the Excel file here that I was referring to, this is table 9.1. I have data on salary, right? We have data on salary. For now, I'm not talking about spending. This column will be used later. And then now you see that there are some D's or dummy variables here, D2 and D3. So what are these? We will come to these later. For now, let's focus on this calculation, average salary. As we said that there are three regions, so average salary for northeast or north central. Here I have calculated this. And which column I have used? I have used those, rows where the value of D2 is 1. So that means that the dummy variable D2 is defined in a manner that it is equal to 1 whenever the district is in northeast or north central. So I have chosen all those values when I am calculating this average. You see, let me double click on this. You see that when I calculate the average salary for northeast or north central, I have only selected the data for which the values of D2 are equal to 1. So this is the average salary for northeast or north central. Similarly, average salary for south, now we know that south is the category for which D3 is equal to 1. So you can see that once I double click here and scroll it a bit down, so now you can see that all the values of salaries are selected for which D3 is equal to 1. So this is the D3 column and it is equal to 1. Similarly, I have calculated average salary for West, and for West I have not introduced a separate dummy. I know that if D2 and D3 both are equal to 0, then it is understood that this is the third region. I will shortly explain the reason for not introducing a separate dummy for the region West. Once I have calculated these average salary, if I focus on these calculations here, you can see that the average salary, apparently it seems that there is a difference in the average salary across the three regions. But you know that we need to check whether this this difference is statistically significant or not, or in other words, based on this difference which is reported in a sample. Remember, we have data from a sample, so these average salaries are sample salaries. So we want to conclude whether based on this sample can we generalize about the entire population or the entire states in USA, that the average salaries are across the three regions. I mean, they are different across the three regions. So, I mean, we have, if you just have a look at these, it seems that the average salary of West is, in fact, the average salary of South seems the lowest, followed by the West and then the Northeast. So let's check whether this difference exists in the population or not. But first of all, before I go on checking this difference, I mean how to check whether these differences are statistically significant or not. First, I will introduce you a concept which is called the concept of dummy variable trap. So what is meant by dummy variable trap? First of all, if for a moment let me refer you back to the slides here. Although I've already explained in the Excel file, but just for a quick recap, that D2 is 1 for the states northeast or north central, D3 is 1 if the state is in south. So now you can see that I haven't introduced a dummy for the third region, that is west. Let's say if I introduce a dummy for the third region as well, D4, and suppose that D4 is 1 for the third region, which is west. So let me scroll it down. You can see that first of all, let me freeze these panes for you so that you can see the headings once I scroll down. So this is D4, and let's see when is it equal to 1. So you can see that D4 is equal to 1 whenever D2 and D3 are 0. In other words, if it's not region that falls in D2, if it's not in region that falls in D3, then of course this is the third region and we have coded it 1. So here what am I saying is, let's say if I introduce 3 dummies. See, we have 3 regions and we introduce 3 dummies or 3 dummy variables. So what will happen? First of all, let's run this regression in Excel and let's see what type of results are reported and why we should avoid introducing 3 dummies here. So let's say if I click on data and then data analysis, which is a standard protocol for running regression in Excel. So I scroll it down, we have this option of regression here and I click OK. And then I have to tell the y variable, which is of course the salary. So I've selected the salary and now I need the x. So let's say I introduce all the dummy variables, all the 3 dummy variables here as the independent variable, and I have the option of putting the output in a new worksheet ply. So let's use this option and click OK. So this is the output. By the way, I have already run this regression before starting this video and I stored the same file here with this name, dummy variable trap. So if I click here, dummy variable trap, first of all what you have to note is when Excel reports the output, the variables or the independent variables, they are named as x variable 1, x variable 2 and x variable 3. So how do we know that which variable is corresponding to which of the dummies? Is simply have a look at the order. You see in the Excel file, first of all D2 is mentioned, then D3 and then D4. So this first x variable 1 is D2. I have already written here. X variable 2 D3, x variable 3 D4. Okay, so that was about naming the x variables. If you have a look at this row, x variable 3 row, you can observe that no results are reported here. This is sort of a weird output where almost everything is 0. Actually, what's happening is, once we introduce 3 dummies for 3 regions, remember that we had 3 regions. So if I introduce 3 dummy variables, then for one of the dummy variables results are not reported. In other words, this regression is not appropriate, and so Excel has detected that there is some problem in this data. So let me tell you what type of problem is it. Coming back to this D4, if you just have a look at this D4, it's very easy to identify that this D4 is simply equal to 1 minus D2 minus D3, right? Simply, if you subtract D2 and D3 from 1, you will notice that you are actually replicating the D4 column. Just let's match. Let me hide this for a moment. Just match these values, D4 or 1 minus D2 minus D3. Scroll it down, you'll see that these are all always equal. So what does that mean? It simply means that a D4 is nothing but it is a linear combination of D2 and D3, right? It's just a linear expression. So that means that if we include D4 in the model, we are introducing the issue of multicollinearity. What does that mean? If you can recall the assumption of no multicollinearity, it means that the independent variables should not be related with each other. But what's happening here? D4 is related to D2 and D3. So this is the issue, that we should not introduce introduce 3 dummy variables here, because we had 3 regions. So what does that mean? If we have 3 regions, we should introduce 2 dummy variables. If we have, let's say, 4 regions, then we should introduce 3 dummy variables. So in general, if a dummy variable has m categories, then we should introduce m minus 1 dummy variables. Like if the dummy variable is gender, and suppose that currently we focus only on male and female, then there are 2 categories of gender here, male and female. So how many dummy variables should we introduce? Only 1. So the general rule is, if a variable or a dummy variable has m categories, then you should introduce m minus 1 dummy variables to avoid the dummy variable trap. And what is dummy variable trap? I just showed you the result here. The dummy variable trap is that if you introduce number of dummies equal to number of categories, then one of the dummy variable is dropped from the regression by all the softwares, and the results of that regression are not reliable, right? So this is the idea of dummy variable trap. Okay, so if I introduce only 2 dummy variable, that is just D2 and D3, if I have to run this regression, what I will be doing is, I'll go in data analysis, regression, and because I already ran this regression, so the Y series is already selected. I just need to change the X series. So this time I'm going to choose only D2 and D3, and I can press OK. For now I'm pressing cancel because I already ran this regression and I've stored in this sheet D2 D3 regression. But if you are replicating these exercises, you can press OK. By the way, my students from NAS, they have access to the Excel file through our official portal, LMS and MS Team. The general viewers who are following this channel for learning experience, they can just drop me an email. I will shortly share my email address towards the end of this video. So you can write me an email and I can share this Excel file with you. Okay, so coming back to the regression D2, D3, where I introduce only two variables, that is D2 and D3. Now you can see that the results are, there is nothing weird about these results. All the numbers are properly reported. We don't have any error here, or we don't have any row here where all the values are 0. Okay, so this is the regression output, and the same regression equation is reported here in the slides as well. For a moment, let me refer back to the slide here. So this is the regression result that is reported in Excel file as well. So let's go back to the Excel file. You can see that the intercept value is this 48,000. In fact, let me read it in this form: 48014. Then D2 coefficient is 1524 and D3 coefficient is minus 1721. So that same regression is reported here. This is the intercept, coefficient of D2 and coefficient of D3. Now, how to interpret this regression result? First of all, if you have to focus, for example, if I put D2 and D3 both equal to 0, right? If both D2 and D3 are equal to 0, it means that it's not a northeast or north central state, and it's not even a south state. So that means that's a state in west region. So remember that the value of intercept is the value of the dependent variable for the region which we have not included in the regression. So here we have included D2 and D3, that is, we have included northeast and north central and south. So which region we have discarded from the regression? That's the west region. So for the west region, the average salary, because the dependent variable was salary, so for the west region, the average salary is $48014. And what is this coefficient D2? It means that for a state in northeast or north central, because D2 is 1 for northeast or north central. So for a state in northeast or north central region, what we will be actually doing, we will be putting D2 equal to 1. So if in this equation I put D2 is equal to 1, my result will be this number plus this number, that is 48014 plus 1524.099. So what does that mean? This coefficient is actually the expected difference between the salary of west and of northeast or north central. So the base category is west. So as compared to the base category, salary in the region northeast or north central is expected to be 1524 units higher than the west region. Why higher? Because the sign is plus. Similarly, for D3, which is the south region, the salary is expected to be 1721 units lesser than west. So now we have to, using this regression equation, I can easily find out the expected salary in the three regions. As I repeat that the intercept is the expected salary in the base region, which is west, which we discarded from the regression. Coefficient of D2 is the expected difference between the salary of the west and of northeast or north central. Similarly, you can interpret D3. Okay, so these coefficients of D2 and D3, these are sometimes called the differential intercept coefficient, right? Why differential intercept? Because they are interpreted in terms of difference from the intercept. So if this intercept value and this D2 equal to 1 is added, that is sort of an intercept for the region northeast or north central. Anyhow, and that's just a technical interpretations, but the actual way in which we can interpret, I've already explained you. that you put D2 is equal to 1, and for the region south you put D3 is equal to 1. Next question is whether these differences that are reported in this regression are they significant or not. For that you have to focus on something which is called p-value, and by the way, when you run the regression in Excel, the p-values are already reported here. So you can see that the p-value for D2 is 0.52 and p-value for D3 is 0.48, and the same is reported here in the slide as well. 0.52 for D2 and 0.48 approximately for D3. Now you can see that this p-value is a large number. How we make use of the p-value is that if p-value is a small number, and what is meant by small, in general we say that if the p-value is less than or equal to 0.05, then we will say that that dummy variable or that region has a significant difference from the base region. So here you can see both both p-values, they are much higher than 0.05. So that means that although there exists difference in salaries of the three regions in the sample, but these differences are not that statistically significant. They are not that much significant that on the basis of these we can comment that these differences do exist actually in the population as well. So I have already told you that whenever we run a regression, we always comment on the p-values as well. So based on the p-value of D2 and D3, we have just concluded that the salary difference across the three regions, they are statistically insignificant. In other words, based on the sample, if we generalize about the entire population, that is, in this sample we had data on some 51 states. If you check here, we had data on 51 states. So based on these 51 states, if we were to comment about all the states of United States of America or USA, then we can say that across USA, based on this regression results, it seems that the salary differences across the different regions, they are statistically insignificant. One important thing is whenever we are interpreting differences, even if the dummy variables, let's say if you in a particular example the dummy variables they are statistically significant, that is their p-value is less than or equal to 0.05. Even in those cases you will not say you can't say what is the reason for those differences. For example, if the salary across the three regions was statistically significant, then what is the reason or what is the factor behind that difference that is not reported or that is not being a point of focus of the dummy variables? For that research is required. For example, what am I saying is, let's say that these p-values were less than or equal to 0.05, and that would have implied that the salary varies from region to region in USA. But as a researcher, now it is your task to go and find out what is the reason behind those differences. Dummy variable will only tell you that there exists a difference. What is the reason for that difference? That is the job of the researcher to find out. Okay, so I have already told you or explained you the idea of dummy variable trap. So this slide is again talking in reference to the Excel sheet where we discussed the dummy variable trap. So I've already covered this one. Some important descriptions or definition. The category for which no dummy variable is assigned is called the base category, or it's also sometimes called as benchmark, control, comparison, reference, or the omitted category. Just like in the last example, we omitted the dummy for west region. I mean, we did not include that dummy, so that west became the omitted category or the base category. So all the results were always interpreted in reference to the base category. That is, when we were interpreting the coefficients of the dummy variable, we were comparing those coefficients with the salary in the west region. So the dummy variable regression is always interpreted in reference to the base category. It's also sometimes, by the way, also called control group or comparison group, so on. So the intercept value represent the mean or the expected value of the base category. Like when we were interpreting this regression, I told you that this intercept value is the expected salary in the west region, which is the base category. The coefficients attached to the dummy variables are known as the differential intercept coefficient, because they tell by how much the value of the category that receives the value of 1 differs from the intercept coefficient of the benchmark category. So in simple words, why we call these as differential intercept coefficient? Because it tells us that in reference to the intercept, how much is the difference between this dummy variable and the category for which the intercept is defined. So that's why we call this differential intercept coefficient. Next is the idea of ANCOVA, or analysis of covariate. This is similar to the ANOVA model. The only difference is, in addition to the dummy variable, the independent variable also includes a quantitative variable. So if you look at the data file table 9.1, you will see that we have a quantitative variable called spending here. So let's see what's this variable. First of all, let's understand its concept. So let's say that we again use the table 9.1 and we want to find out the determinants of average salary. Let's say we take into the account of an additional variable, expenditure on public school by local authorities. So if I apart from the region dummies, I include another variable x, which is spending on public school per pupil. So you can see that spending is given in dollars, so x is a quantitative variable, whereas d2 and d3 are dummy variables. So now this model is called ANCOVA model. And why ANCOVA? Because we have two types of independent variable. Some of the variables are dummy, whereas one, or in some cases we can have more than one. So some of the variables are pure quantitative, and this x variable is called covariate, and the whole model is called the ANCOVA model. So if we were to run this regression, I'm not running the regression again in Excel, because that's the same activity. I mean, you can simply choose the x variables. So based on this Excel file, just try running this regression by using salary as y variable and spending d2 and d3 as your independent variables or your x variables. So you will obtain these results. One important thing is, if you compare these results with the regression that we just ran, where we only use the region dummies, you can see that the intercept and the differential intercept coefficient, they are different. I mean, from this regression you can see that the expected salary in the west region is 28694, whereas the expected difference from northeast or central from the west is 2954. So why these results are different? Because now we have included additional independent variables in the model. So in the earlier regression, then let me refer back to the regression that I'm talking right now. In this regression, we only had the dummies for the region. So These regression results were only reporting that there exists some difference, and that difference is across different regions. But I mean, what is the reason behind or the factor behind those differences? We don't know. So let's say we included an additional variable by thinking that maybe the salaries are different across different regions because spending on public school across different region is different. So once we included another variable in the model, you have seen that the coefficients or the regression results are revised. So this is nothing to be surprised about, because whenever you include additional variables in the model, then the model will recalibrate or re-estimate itself. It will give you new estimates for the differences across regions. So how to interpret this regression? For example, if I were to focus only on the region, so let's say if I interpret this D2, that means for the region where D2 is equal to 1, which means for the region where district is in northeast or north central. So if a district is in northeast or north central, then the expected salary as compared to the base, which is west, is $2954 lesser than the salary in west. Similarly, you can interpret the D3 category. So interpretation is same. The only difference I am focusing here is whenever you include an additional variable in the model, the coefficients of all the variables will be calculated again, and they will be different generally. So how to interpret the coefficient of xi? Xi was public spending. That means that you see that the sign is positive. So what does that mean? Ceteris paribus, that is all other things remaining constant, as public expenditure goes up by $1 on average, a public school teacher's salary goes up by about $2.34. So this regression suggests that if public expenditure increases, then the salary are expected to, or the salary is expected to increase. If we were to interpret whether these results are statistically significant or not, if you can read this footnote, if there is a 1 star attached here, that means p-value is less than 5%. So 1 star is only attached with the intercept and with this xi. So that means that public spending from this regression, because you know that intercept is generally not interpreted, we generally interpret only the independent variable coefficient, that is d2, d3 and xi here. So this xi variable or the public spending variable is statistically significant, which means as a policy implication, it is, this regression suggests that if we want, for example, this regression is suggestive of the fact that if we increase the public spending or public spending per pupil, then we can expect that the salary of the teacher in that region will go up. So this was about ANCOVA model. Next we will discuss the dummy variable alternative to the cow test or the chow test. So now we discuss the dummy variable alternative to the chow test. If you haven't watched chapter 8 video, and then probably you need to watch chapter 8 video before you watch this one. From now onward we are discussing a chow test, which is a structural break test. So in chapter 8 video I have discussed in detail what is meant by a structural break and what is chow test. Just for a quick recap, if you have data, let me show you a data here. Suppose we have data on savings and income for USA, and we know that in the some years like the year 1982, there was a structural break in the USA economy, where you can, if you can refer back to the historical events of oil price shocks, the Gulf War and the OPEC cartel, you will see that the year 1982 was a sort of a year that introduced a change in the saving patterns of uh, the people living in USA. So Chow test is used when you want to test whether a particular year or a particular data point can be treated as a place where there is a, you could say, a significant event has occurred that has changed the relationship between the dependent and independent variable. So if you are analyzing the relationship between savings and income, in other words, you are trying to estimate marginal propensity to save, uh, then you need to know where that data is coming from, what are the important events that are occurring in that economy. For example, if it is data from the 70 to 1995 and it's about USA, then you should explore the history of USA, and you should explore what are the significant events in the history of the USA that might change the relationship between saving and income. For example, is there any year after which people then started to save more as compared to the previous years? So let's say that 1982 is a particular year where we expect that certain significant changes have occurred that have changed the relationship between savings and income. So Chow test, if let me, pardon me, but I'm repeatedly referring to the last video because I have in detail discussed the idea of Chow test in chapter 8 video, that is the last video. Anyhow, the Chow test is a procedure that is used to test whether a break that is reported in literature or reported by some expert economists, is that structural break statistically significant, or can we say statistically that this year or this structural break has significantly changed the relationship between dependent and independent variable. This is done through Chow test. Chow test is relatively, you can say, a test in which you have to run different regressions. That is, one regression is before the structural break, another regression for after structural break, and then you also run a regression for the entire data. Like here you can see, if 82 was your structural break year, then you have to run 3 regression: before 82, after 82, and then the third one is overall for the full data. And now I am going to talk about the dummy variable alternative to the Chow test. We can simply use dummy variable to test whether a particular structural break in the data is that significant or not, and whether that structural break has changed the intercept, slope, or both. So let's say if we have first case, both the intercept and the slope coefficients are same in two regression. So what does that mean? Two regression means pre-break and post-break. So if before structural break and after structural break both the intercept and slope are same, it means that the structural break has effectively produced no difference. So we call it coincident regression. So we have this type of a scatter plot where you can see that there is no change throughout this series. The second case is only the intercept in the two regressions are different, but the slopes are same. So those of you who have the background in mathematics, you know that intercept is the point where the curve touches the y-axis. So now you can see that we have two different points where two different curves. So you can imagine that this is one curve is for the pre-break period, the pre-structural break period, and the other curve is for the post-structural break period. So if only the intercepts are different but the slope are same, you know that whenever the slope are same, then the two lines are parallel. So this is called parallel regressions. And the third one is the intercept are same but the slopes are different. So now you can see that the point where the two curves are touching the y-axis, which is the intercept, they are same but the slopes are different. So these lines are not parallel now. We call this concurrent regression. And the last is where both slope and intercept are different, and we call it dissimilar regression. Of course, we don't have to always plot the scatter plot, and just on the basis of visual inspection we should not declare whether it's a coincident regression, parallel, concurrent or dissimilar. So we will use dummy variable, and we will statistically declare whether which of these four types is the structural break producing the results of. So just focus again on this data, saving income data, and let's say the structural break is suspected to be in the year 1982. So what we are going to do, we are going to run a regression where we will introduce a dummy variable d, and that dummy variable will be 1 for all the years in the time period 1982 to 1995. That is the post structural break. That is, we assume or we are expecting that 1982 is the year after which the relationship between saving and income has changed. So for 82 to 95, dummy is 1 and it is 0 for the observation 1970 to 81. So what we have done is, if we are suspecting a structural break, we have introduced a dummy variable for that structural break, and it is coded 1 for post break period and 0 for pre break or pre structural break period. By the way, it doesn't matter, we can swap this 0 1. We should only, if I swap this 0 1, that would only make the interpretations different, otherwise the method will be same. So I have introduced a dummy, simple dummy, and then xt, which is my independent variable, which in this case was income, as we said that saving depend upon income. So xt is income, and dt times xt. You see, now this is an interactive dummy, and what is the purpose of introducing this interactive dummy, you will shortly understand. Let's say if I introduce, I put d is equal to 0 or dt equal to 0, that is the expected saving or expected saving function for 1970 to 81, because it's a period where d is 0, 70 to 81. So you can simply put d is equal to 0, and from this equation, when you put d equal to 0 and you ignore the random error, then the expected or the mean saving function is equal to alpha 1 plus beta 1 times xt. Similarly, mean saving function for 82 to 95, when you will put d is equal to 1, and when you put d is equal to 1 from this expression, you can easily verify that the mean saving is alpha 1 plus alpha 2 plus beta 1 plus beta 2 times xt. So that is just a mathematical transformation of the model, but the point is how to interpret, or from this regression how to find out which of the previously discussed four types of regression is this. So let's say if the coefficient alpha 2 is significant, right? If the coefficient alpha 2 is significant, that means that the intercepts are different, that is intercept pre-break and post-break, right? If beta 2 is significant, that means that the slope before the break and after the break, they are different. If both alpha 2 and beta 2 are significant, it means both the intercept and the slope pre-break and post-break are different. So if you have data, you can try inputting this data in Excel file and introduce a dummy variable in a manner I have just explained, and see whether the saving income regression and the structural break what type of results are reported. I have already run that regression and the results are shown here. You can, after watching this video as a take home activity, you can enter this data and replicate and see whether you are able to get these results from Microsoft Excel, or if you use any other software, that's alright. So this is the result. Now you can see that star represent that the p-value is less than 0.05. So that means that dt it is significant, and dt times xt it is also significant. So that means based on dt's coefficient, the intercepts are different pre-break and post-break. Based on the coefficient of dt xt, the slope coefficient pre-break and post-break are different. So it means that this structural break has caused a change in intercept as well as in slope. So this is the case of, referring back to this diagram, you see this is the case of dissimilar regression where both the slope and the intercept have changed due to the structural break. So this is how you can use the dummy variables instead of the complete Chow test. So what is the benefit of Chow test, or the advantage is, just on the basis of a single regression you can easily comment whether the structural break has changed the intercept, whether it has changed the slope, or both of them, or none of them. One additional advantage of this dummy variable technique is when you are using a single regression. For example, if I refer back to this slide here, you see if I were to run a single regression, so I have relatively a larger sample size as compared to the procedure of Chow test, where we have to run 3 different regression: pre-break period, post-break period, and overall. So in smaller sample sizes, you know that the reliability of results is generally compromised due to a concept called degrees of freedom. It's not necessary that you currently are able to relate to the ideas of degrees of freedom, but in general what is meant here, that in smaller sample sizes the results are generally less reliable. So in Chow test, sometimes the sample sizes for pre-break and post-break period, they may be smaller and the results accuracy may be compromised. Whereas in dummy variable technique, we only run one single regression for the entire data sets, and the reliability of test is better as compared to the Chow test. So next we discussed how to interpret interaction effect using dummy variable. Let's say I have data on hourly wage of some people, their education level, their gender, and their race. So the background is we are exploring whether there is a difference in the salaries of male and female, and a difference between different racial categories. So whether there is discrimination with respect to gender or with respect to race, we can run this regression if we have data on the attached variable, that is the wage and education, gender and racial status. But what if we want to see whether there is an interaction between gender and race? That is, what is the combined impact of being a female and being non-white and non-Hispanic? In other words, simple word, whether gender and race, if we see what is the collective influence of these two variables on the hourly wages. So what we can do is we can introduce an interactive dummy variable called D2, D3. So if I have data on, let's say, hourly wages of people, their gender, their racial status, and their education level, then of course I can simply enter that data in Excel and I can run that regression easily. But the fact is how to interpret that regression. Let's say if I have the data and I input that data in regression and I ran that regression in Excel. Keep that in mind. If you have data on D2 and D3, you will have to generate data on D2 D3 interactive form yourself. So what you will do is you will multiply D2 with D3 and you have an additional column D2 D3. You will call that column D2 D3 and rest of the data is simple. So this is the interaction effect dummy that you have created yourself because you want to see whether there is an collective influence of gender and race in terms of our difference in the hourly wages. So if this is the you can say output, so let me refer to the Excel file where I have discussed this. So this is the regression output, and let's say if I were to compare a different type of people and how I can compare. First of all, you need to understand that your base category is where D2 and D3 both are 0. And what does that mean? D2 equal to 0 means it's a male, D3 equal to 0 means it's a white Hispanic. So the base category is some person who is a male and he is white Hispanic. So if I want to see that as compared to someone who is male and white Hispanic, what are the expected salaries of other groups? For example, if there is someone who is female and non-white, non-Hispanic. So female means, as I just defined, the dummy for female is 1. So D2 is equal to 1 for female and D3 is equal to 1 for non-white, non-Hispanic. So if both these are 1, so in this equation I'll put D2 equal to 1 and D3 equal to 1. So if I put D2 equal to 1 and D3 equal to 1, I can easily calculate the expected salary. So let's say I double click here. So what I'm doing here is I'm using this intercept and then I put D2 equal to 1 and D3 equal to 1. So the third option is, the third or in fact the fourth term should be 2.1289 star 1. So because why? Because both D2 and D3 are 1, so D2 times D3 will also be 1. So this is the expected salary of someone who is female and non-white. So as compared to a male white Hispanic, the expected salary of a female non-white non-Hispanic is roughly $2.22 lesser, or in fact this was the hourly wage. So hourly wage is $2.22 lesser as compared to a male who is white Hispanic. Now if I were to compare with someone who is female but in fact someone who is male and white Hispanic. So if the person is male, then the gender dummy is 0. White Hispanic, then the gender dummy will be again 0, right? Because how I defined is that the male category, the gender category is 1 for female and 1 for non-white, non-Hispanic. So this is actually my base category. If I use the regression equation here, the expected salary will be, I will put all of these 0, both dummies will be equal to 0, and if both are 0, of course their multiplication will also be 0. So you can see that simply the intercept has reproduced or given in the result. So that means that simply this intercept category is the expected hourly wage of a male who is white Hispanic. Of course the hourly wage of male white Hispanic could not be negative. So this sign of this intercept is economically or in reference to economics or practically this is not significant. This is not interpretable because of course hourly wage cannot be negative. Anyhow, even if this intercept was positive, then you would have interpreted that this is the expected hourly wage of the base category, which is where both dummies are 0. Let's say we want to compare this time a male, what, non-white, non-Hispanic. Okay, so if the person is male, then the gender dummy is 0, non-white, non-Hispanic, so the racial dummy is 1. So this time the expected salary will be, by the way, these two columns are redundant, so let me delete these. So expected salary will be, let me copy this one and I will make some changes. So the expected salary is, the gender dummy will be 0 and the racial dummy will be 1, and their interaction will be of course 0, because 0 multiplied by 1 is 0. So this is the expected salary of someone who is male and non-white as compared to a male white Hispanic. So this is how you can use interaction dummy to compare different type of respondents in the sample. And by the way, when I was using the code female dummy equal to 1 for female and race dummy equal to 1 for non-white, non-Hispanic, you can once again refer to the coding here. You can see that D2 the gender dummy is 1 for female and the race dummy is 1 for non-white, non-Hispanic, and this is exactly what is done here. Gender dummy 1 for female, 1 for race dummy 1 for non-white, non-Hispanic. So this is how you can calculate expected salary of different types of respondents, and the base category is where both the dummies are 0. So this is how dummy variables can be used in interaction form. The next is the concept of the use of dummy variable in seasonal analysis. Let's say you have data on ice cream sales or on any series and you want to see whether there is an impact of season in determining the values of the dependent variable. For example, if we have data on ice cream sales and we have in fact 4 quarters of the year, and we want to see whether across the 4 quarters ice cream sales, do they differ or not. So if we have 4 quarters, we are going to introduce 3 dummy variables, because remember the idea of dummy variable trap. So if we have 4 quarters, we are going to introduce 3 dummy variables in a manner that the first dummy will be 1 for quarter number 1, the second dummy will be 1 for quarter number 2, the third dummy will be 1 for quarter number 3, and so on. And you can run that regression, and then if the dummies are reported in a manner that the results are significant. For example, if I introduce 3 dummies for 4 quarters, and let's say first quarter becomes my base category, so you can easily interpret that the value of the, let's say if this y represent ice cream sales, then the ice cream sales for the second quarter are higher as compared to first quarter, because the sign is plus. And how much higher? 245 units higher. Similarly, you can interpret for the third quarter and fourth quarter, and whether these are significant or not. As usual, notice the p-value. If the p-value is less than 0.0 less than or equal to 0.05, that means there is a statistically significant difference between the base category and the dummy variable corresponding category. That is, in this case, if D2 is significant, that means that ice cream sales from the first quarter are different, statistically significantly different from the second quarter. So this is how you can analyze the impact of seasonality using the dummy variables. And if at some stage you want to remove the impact of seasonality, let's say you want to have a series of ice cream sales which is free of the effect of season or quarters, then how you can do that is you simply note the residuals of that regression. That is, run the regression in which you regress ice cream sales on the 3 quarters and note the residual values. So those residual values are simply the you can say deseasonalized values of ice cream sales. That is the value of ice cream sale after removing the impact of seasonality. So for further details, you are expected to refer to Frisch-Waugh theorem on page 294 to 295 of Gujarati and Porter book, and you will be able to quickly understand further details of deseasonalization. Last topic for today's lecture is the piecewise linear regression. Sometimes if you have data on a variable uh, and let's say you want to see whether there is a break in the series, that is the regression is linear but there is sort of a knot or a break point which you can call that this is same as the idea of structural break. So how you can test this piecewise linear regression? Let's say we will be referring to an Excel file where you will understand the idea of piecewise linear regression. Just a moment, let me open the file. So here it is. So let's say I have an example that you want to see how student secure marks in a quiz, how that depends upon their study hours. So let's say generally there is an expectation that if you study more you are going to score more marks, but sometimes you know that there is some the idea of saturation point. That is of course you need a certain amount of sleep, a certain amount of rest as well. So if you keep studying, let's say the entire day or so many hours that you become so much restless at the time of the exam, then it's going to badly influence your marks. So let's say we have data on marks and study hours of different students, and we plot that data where marks are on y-axis and study hours are on x-axis. So you can see that generally if you are studying more your marks are increasing, but then there is a point of saturation after which if you start studying more your marks are decreasing. So if I just click here, you can see that this is the point where study hour are equal to 13. So this data is suggesting that if you study more than 13 hours, that is badly influencing your marks, because maybe you are compromising on your sleep, you are compromising on your you can say relaxation time and so on. So based on this scatter plot, it seems that if you study more than 13 hours, that is going to influence your marks. So whether that pattern is statistically significant or not, or whether that pattern is generalizable for the population, because we have data on these sample students only. So what I am going to do, I am going to introduce D, which is a break dummy, which we suspected that 13 is the point after which the marks, the relationship between marks and study hour is changed. So what I am doing is before 13 the dummy variable value is 0, and after 13 the value of that dummy variable is 1. Next what I am going to do is I am going to note the value where a break is suspected. So 13 is the value of the independent variable, because marks depend upon study hours. So independent variable is study hour. So 13 is the value of independent variable where a break is suspected. So I am calculating another column called xi minus x star, which means I am simply going to subtract 13 from each of the value of the x variable, and then I am going to calculate another column where I am going to multiply this column xi minus x star with the break dummy d. So I am multiplying column d with column f, so I get this column g. Next, what I am going to do is I am going to run a regression using these two columns, this xi minus x star times d and study r, this two columns as independent variable. So study r will be my y variable, sorry, marks will be my y variable, and these two columns g and h will be my independent variable. So I have already ran that regression. So as I said that Excel always write x variable 1, x variable 2. So x variable 1 is xi minus x star times d, because in the sheet first this is mentioned and then study r's are mentioned. So xi minus x star times d, and the second is study r. So you can see that the p value of xi minus x stars times d, this is a very small number. So that means that, let me read it from here, that this p value is a very small number. It is less than or equal to 0.05. So it's statistically significant, and we can conclude that the relationship between marks and study r has significantly changes its nature after the value of study r equal to 13. In other words, the scatter plot was suggesting that if you study more than 13 hours, that is going to badly influence your marks. So the regression results have verified this finding, because the p value, this has shown that it is significant, and you can see that the sign is negative. So after the break, or after study r equal to 13, the expected marks are decreased because the sign is, or coefficient is, negative. So this is how you can use dummy variable for piecewise linear regression. And by the way, one minor point here, sometime if you look, for example, if you look at this p value, this is shown in a pattern which is in exponential form. So if I right click here and click on number format cells, then I have an option of number. Just increase the decimal point, and you will see that this is reported as in its actual form, right? So sometimes the results are reported as exponential form, so you can easily convert by using this procedure that I have just explained. Okay, so this was about the idea of piecewise linear regression model. One last thing is the interpretation. If the dummy variable is introduced in a regression where the dependent variable is in log form, the only thing that you have to keep in mind that if there is a log on the dependent variable, then the beta 2 coefficient is not interpreted as the mean or the arithmetic mean difference. It is interpreted as median wage. So the intercept beta 1 gives the mean log hourly wages or earnings, and the slope coefficient gives the difference in the mean log naturally earnings of male and female. So this is awkward because the data y is in log form. So how we can interpret without using this log form is simply if you take the anti-log of beta 1, that is, if you have result of this regression and you get the value of beta 1 and beta 2, simply take the anti-log of beta 1. So this time that will be the mean hourly wage, in fact that will be the median hourly wage, right? Similarly, you can take the anti-log of beta 1 plus beta 2, because for when dummy is equal to 1, of course the value of log y will be beta 1 plus beta 2. So if you take the anti-log of beta 1 plus beta 2, that will be the median wage for female worker. So this is how you can easily use or interpret dummy variable in the presence of semi-log models. So this was all about today's lecture. Thank you for watching. I understand that most of these lecture videos are full of different concepts, and sometimes it's very demanding to keep understanding and grasping the concepts here, especially for those who don't have a lot of background in statistics. So if you want to understand or develop a slow and steady understanding of statistics, you can watch my playlist on introduction to statistics, and then you can watch this playlist which is solely about econometrics. So keep watching the channel, and you can suggest me if you want a video on a particular topic. You are more than welcome to drop me an email, or you can comment in the comment section. So these are my contact details here. With this, I thank you once again for watching this video, and I hope and I pray that the lecture contents are clear and are beneficial for my dear viewers. Thank you.